Morning to those who are gathered here in the sanctuary and to all who are joining online. We begin this service this morning with a musical prelude by John Mayhood. My name's Frank Dukes. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm pleased to be leading worship this morning with Reverend Tim Temerson, pianist John Mayhood, my fellow Mosaic Squad members John Alexander, Diane Ober, Linda Dukes, and additional members of the Mosaic String Band, Ann Solomini and Kathleen Rowlands. Whoever you are, wherever you've come from, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville welcomes you. We are delighted to have you join us this morning and are grateful for all who've made this moment of our gathering possible. I invite us to take a moment to greet others. Those online may unmute, and those here in the sanctuary or social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you may not know. We offer a special welcome to newcomers and also those who've left for time being and are coming back to visit. We invite newcomers to join us after the service, as well as everybody else, in the social hall at the newcomer table, which will have a red tablecloth and use one of our red mugs, which are for newcomers to the congregation. You Seville members and friends are reminded to offer anyone with a red mug a warm welcome to our congregation. There's also a live stream of the service in the social hall. All are welcome in the sanctuary, but for those needing a roomier space, the social hall can be a good option. Those joining us on Zoom are invited to stay online for conversation following the service. Many thanks to all the people who make Sunday morning services possible, our greeters, ushers, hospitality, altar decorating teams, and our wonderful religious education leaders and volunteers. Special thanks to our AV Tech Nash Ford. Okay. And now we have greetings from board member Tammy Wilt. Thank you.
Good morning. How are you all doing today? It's a beautiful day. So I am Tammy Wilt. I'm secretary of the board. This is my second year being secretary. It's such a fun and exciting time. And the really interesting part is sometimes I go places and someone will walk up to me and says, "Are you Tammy?" And I'm like, "Yes." Like, "Yeah, I go to UU. I don't go to the church, but I see you online." So you never know where we're going to see each other. If you haven't had a chance to read the newsletter, you may not realize it is flu and colds and COVID season. There is not a lot of information available publicly right now because COVID numbers aren't being released. However, our wonderful member Greg Townsend has written an article about things you can do to protect yourself. And unfortunately, what they're seeing through wastewater is COVID numbers are likely rising. They're just not getting reported. So just be aware and act accordingly to whatever your comfort is. Any questions, please reach out. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, Tammy. So here are this morning's announcements. The Breeze Church Database rollout starts today. The Breeze team, I should say the hardworking Breeze team, will be in the social hall after the service, helping folks sign on to Breeze and learn about its functions, including the online directory. As part of our partnership with Simbareras, UUCville will once again be teaching a pre-K English readiness class for 3- and 4-year-olds this fall. The class begins on October 14. We'll meet here in the church on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 11:30 a.m. In order to help the children and the parents feel welcome and to keep them safe in these challenging times, we need volunteers to monitor and staff the Edgewood Lane and social hall doors during the class. If you can help, please see Reverend Tim or email him at tim@uucharlottesville.org. Are you new to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville? Join Rev Tim, several lay leaders for a monthly newcomer circle next Sunday, October 12th at 12:15.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Our call to worship this morning comes from Jack Mendelson. Here, in this sanctuary of ancient dreams and wisdom and beauty, we come to grow, to be healed, to stretch mind and heart, to be challenged, renewed.
To be helped in our own continuing struggles for meaning and for love, to help build a world with more justice and mercy in it, to be counted among the hopers and doers.
In the face of cynicism, darkness, and even brutality, we seek to align ourselves with a living community that would affirm rather than despair, that would think and act rather than simply adjust and succumb.
Here we invite the spirit of our own humanity and the healing powers under, around, through, and beyond it to give us the nerve and grace, the toughness and sensitivity to search out the truth that frees and the life that maketh all things new. Come,
let us worship together.
As Ethan and the Sandus family comes forward to light our flaming chalice, the symbol of our free faith, please join in saying our chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration the life we share together. And now with the hand motions, we light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is a church of open minds. This is a church of helping hands. This is a church of loving hearts.
I wanted to just say one word about the song that we're going to open with. So we're opening with This Land Is Your Land, a Woody Guthrie anthem that has as easily his most well-known song, but it's not a song without some controversy. So we wanted to acknowledge that the lyrics, "This land is your land, this land is my land," can strike us as kind of tone deaf in these days of indigenous acknowledgments of land rights. And so luckily the folk process has stepped in to help us with this. There is a verse that I used to sing back in the 60s and 70s that I guess some of you may have never sung before, but we've inserted it here as verse 3 when we get to the lyrics. And it was written by, or is credited as being written by Cappy Israel, who is a Quaker activist. She has actually acknowledged in something that I found when I was doing some research that she was a part of the folk process. Her whole family were activists, and they all contributed to this verse, and her basic main contribution was just publishing it in Sing Out, so she got the credit. But we're giving her credit and her whole family credit, and then we're going to try to sing it with some gusto as we get to that verse. And it speaks to her and her family's attempt to address this kind of tone deaf character of the song. So I think Woody, as we know, was adept at dealing with all kinds of difference and all kinds of justice and injustice. And I'm certain that he would be welcoming the addition of this verse to the song. So I hope you'll rise in body and spirit and join us in singing with as much spirit and gusto as you can muster. This land is your land.
So will the children and anybody else young at heart who would like to come and sit on the rug, please come. Sit so you can still see the screen, because there will be some images. And adults, make sure you each have your paper clips. They were being passed out. You should have 6 paper clips, please. And you can make 5 of them into a chain as the story goes on. Don't worry, kids, you're going to get your paper clips in a little while. So welcome. I'm glad to have you coming forward. We have quite a few. Make room here. Make room for Sam. Sam, you could be right over here. My name is Linda Dukes. My pronouns are she and her. So we have a story today about this, a paperclip. Do you know what a paperclip is for? To connect papers, clip them together, yeah. So if I have different papers and I put it on the right way here like that, they stay together. Okay, welcome. So another thing you might want to make sure we all know is what resist means. If I'm going to resist Rev Tim, I'm going to kind of push back, right? I'm going to push back. So that's what we're talking about, resistance, which we don't need right now. Okay. So in a land far away, But only 85 years ago, people used little paper clips to change lives in their country. How many of you kids know about World War II? Just raise your hand if you know about World War II. Most everybody, okay? Those who don't, it was a big war back in the early 1940s involving most of the countries in the world. So now in the beginning of World War II, Norway, a country in Northern Europe, was supposed to be neutral. And neutral means not taking sides. But it was invaded and taken over by Nazi Germany. However, the king of Norway and the government was able to escape to another country and set up their government in England. So the Nazis said no one could show any support for that king or the government, and they couldn't wear pictures of the king, they couldn't wear or fly the Norwegian flag. So they were told they had to be loyal to the Nazi leader, Adolf Hitler, and to believe that a certain group of people, the Jewish people, were the cause of many problems and should be sent away. Clearly, UUs don't like what Hitler and the Nazis were doing. Most of the people in Norway didn't want to be ruled by another country. Some university students decided to use a simple thing, a paperclip, and wear it on their clothes like this. Whoops, if you don't drop it. To show that they were resisting. With that simple object, resistors could identify each other when they were out and about, and they could tell who was on their side. Seeing someone else wearing a paperclip let them know that they were not alone in their resistance. Now, when the Nazis figured out that these paperclips meant something and that it meant that people didn't like them, they'd made it illegal to wear them. They were afraid that little paper clips would make the people who were opposing them more powerful. So Norwegians stood up to the Nazis in other ways too. I'll just tell you about two groups, the school teachers and the church leaders. Schools and churches were ordered to teach Nazi ideas, but many ministers and teachers said no. Out of 14,000 teachers, 12,000 of them went on strike, refusing to teach at all. Now that really took courage, because standing up to the Nazis was no easy thing to do. 1,000 of the teachers, in fact, were arrested, and most of them were sent to a prison camp. So that was really scary. And still, the teachers did not give in, and many parents supported them. Everyone could tell that the teachers' resistance worked, because after a while, the Nazis decided that it was better to get the teachers to teach and have schools running than to have them teach the Nazi ideas. Now for the churches. Norway had a state Lutheran church, and it was also told to teach Nazi ideas. But many ministers said no. Eventually, every bishop in Norway quit, along with 90% of the ministers. Think how brave they were, because that meant they didn't have a salary, they weren't paid anymore, and they even had to move out of their houses because the houses were owned by the state churches. So everyday people helped out. They provided places for the ministers and their families to live, and they helped support them. Some leaders, though, church leaders, were put in jail. Just a second. My paper clips. All right, I can turn the page. Just like with the school teachers, though, even though resistance was hard, the resistance paid off. In the end, the Nazis had to give up on trying to control the church. It didn't work. So it was not easy for the Norwegians to fight back. It took courage and sticking together to support each other. Just think how little paper clips helped bind people together so they would know that they weren't alone in resisting bad laws. Now, let's move to today. And here we have a picture of Jean Carroll, who has been publicly resisting Trump in the courts. She's proudly wearing a paper clip. See it? You have to look carefully. Can you see her paper clip up there? Okay. She encourages us to join in and wear a paper clip to resist Trump's power grabs. So later, when you kids are in children's worship, you'll get your set of 5 paper clips and you can make them into a chain. And the adults, I hope you've already made yours into a chain. Well, that's very, very good, Noah. The 6th one you'll see is for you to wear. The 5 are to put on a chain, and the 6th one you can wear. So we challenge you this week to tell this story to at least 5 other people. And when you tell the story, this is everybody, when you tell the story, you give them a paperclip. Now, if you wear a paperclip, then people might ask you, why are you wearing a paperclip? And you can tell them the story that way. So just think, by next week, we could have 5 times as many people in Charlottesville knowing about this story and about wearing paper clips to resist than we have right now. So thank you very much for listening so carefully. And you'll be going now to the parlor with Bryn, right? Okay. So thanks. We'll sing the children out with the song that John will play.
Friends, we are an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by taking time each week to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. I will now share what was submitted this week. In honor of all of our joys and sorrows, both spoken and unspoken, you are invited now to come forward and place a glass stone in a communal bowl of water. Everyone is welcome to participate, including if you have come through our doors for the first time today. Those online are invited to share their joys and sorrows in the chat. Please do take a stone or stones from one of the baskets and come down the center aisle or side aisles and make your way to the bowl of water on the table in front of the chancel. Ellen Longmore from the pastoral care team will come forward to help hold the space. Ellen will be available for a few minutes after the service in the back corner of the sanctuary, right back over there, if you are in need of support or just want someone to listen. Those online can contact the pastoral care team at pastoral@uucharlottesville.org. Let us begin.
Have a reading by Bill Sinkford. If you don't know, Bill Sinkford is the former president of the UUA, an African-American minister now retired. And he gave a keynote at the Mosaic Conference, which was the starting point for Diane, me, Frank, and Linda in this project that is now, we're now dubbing Mosaic. These words by Sinkford were a high point for the four of us at this conference. So I'm quoting now from here on, I'm quoting from Sinkford. The question for us is whether we will keep on keeping on, especially when times get hard. There's an essay by Camus that I often come back to. Camus was an existentialist philosopher. The existentialists argued that there was no given meaning in life. Existentialists made room for despair. The essay is called The Myth of Sisyphus. Sisyphus, you may remember, was a figure in Greek mythology who offered the secrets of the gods to humans, and the gods were not pleased. They condemned Sisyphus to ceaselessly roll a boulder up to the top of a mountain where the huge rock would just roll back down again and again and again after each time he pushed it up that mountain. Now, it's easy to imagine this repetitive labor with no abiding progress as torment, especially for modern folks like us convinced by the Enlightenment and our faith that progress is possible, that the beloved community might someday be real, that the kingdom might someday actually come. Camus, in his essay, asks us to imagine Sisyphus on his trek down the mountain and ask us to question whether Sisyphus might despair. Quote, I find Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain, one always, this is, quoting Camus, I find Sisyphus at the foot of the mountain, one always finds one's burden again. But Sisyphus teaches us the higher fidelity that negates the gods and raises rocks. Sisyphus concludes that all is well. The struggle itself is enough to fill a person's heart. One must imagine Sisyphus happy, end quote. Then Sinkford continues, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. You see, the work goes on, and it can seem unending. And yes, even as we make progress, we understand that there is more to do. That's true. And yes, even the progress that we make can be reversed. Yes, all that is true. And our commitment to principle can draw us in, but it takes more than that to stay the course. The work is serious. We all know that, but it will not be the seriousness that keeps us going. It will be the celebration and the joyful spirit that we all welcome in us and among us that will keep us going
Thank you, John. Thank you, Reverend Sinkford. Well, one of the ways we show our care for one another is by sharing our financial gifts with our larger community and our congregation. Our social action collection for the month of October is for the Haven, and here to tell us about the Haven is Executive Director Owen Brennan.
Thanks for that introduction, Frank. I'm honored to be with you all this morning. Thank you for the warm welcome as I came in. This is a really special community, and I'm honored to be here. As I'm sure many of you know, the Haven's partnership with the Unitarian Church goes back many, many years. The Unitarian Church has been volunteering to serve lunch downtown for over 30 years, I think, is what I heard from Elizabeth. And for the last 16 years, every Sunday, a team from the UU Church has been coming to the Haven and serving lunch. Are members of any of those teams here today or online? Please stand up so we can thank you for all that. We are deeply grateful to be the beneficiaries of October's Social Action Collection. As the federal government radically dismantles our country's social safety net, I'm grateful for a partnership with a community that cares so deeply about working for equity and justice, and especially for its most vulnerable and scapegoated members. So at the Haven, we're best known for our day shelter and the radical hospitality that we provide to our unhoused neighbors every day of the year. This morning at 5:30 a.m., our kitchen manager and a dedicated team of volunteers began preparing breakfast. At 7 a.m. this morning, we opened our doors, and a cross-section of our community streamed in to take showers, do their laundry, eat breakfast, and take care of all the fundamental basic needs that those of us who are housed often take for granted. And very soon, one of the UU teams will be serving lunch as well at noon. Every day of the year, the Haven provides a refuge, a place where anyone in a housing crisis can come to find the support and resources they need to survive and to exit their crisis. And the research is clear. Homelessness is fundamentally a housing crisis. The increasing number of people experiencing homelessness in our community is driven by skyrocketing rents and a scarcity of affordable rental properties. So in addition to the day shelter, more than half of our operations at the Haven are focused on supporting community members to prevent them from entering homelessness in the first time or to help them exit homelessness and regain stable housing. And the Haven is one node in our community's response to ending homelessness. We work closely with Pacham, the Salvation Army, who provide overnight shelter, and a whole host of other nonprofits and social service agencies who are working to prevent homelessness through eviction prevention programs and expand deeply affordable housing options for our most vulnerable community members. We couldn't do this work without the support of partners like you and your congregation. And despite the challenges of our current political environment, I believe that we can build on all of our current efforts to drastically reduce homelessness in our community over the next 10 years. We look forward to continuing to partner with you as we work towards that goal. Thank you all for your support.
Thank you, Owen, and thank you for the work that you and your staff do too. Nash, will you show us the social action slide for those who would like to donate to support the work of the Haven? In addition to giving online, if you would like to make a donation with cash or check, please use the social action collection envelopes here in the sanctuary. Please make checks out to UU Congregation of Charlottesville and write Social Action Collection or the Haven in the memo line. We also invite you to support the ministries and mission of our congregation by using Venmo, the text address, or by visiting the church website. You may also place cash or checks in the collection plates as they are passed. Your financial pledges and gifts to UUCville enable our congregation to put love into action. Let us now dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, "We accept your gifts with gratitude. May we use them wisely, the highest good."
So we are going to devote the rest of the service to learning more about our Mosaic program. To do that by first and foremost giving you a chance to hear from three members of the team. You heard from Linda Dukes already with the wonderful story that she shared with our children. And now we want to hear from John Alexander and Diane Ober and Frank Dukes. Pam McIntyre is also a member of this team but could not be here today. And Reverend Leah and I are also on the team, but you hear from us a lot. So, John, come on up.
In 1968, I was 17 years old and arguably more ignorant and feckless than your average 17-year-old. I was invited to represent my state in a conference, a week-long conference that was organized by the YMCA to be held in Washington, D.C. The focus of the conference was on race, racism, social justice, and a conundrum for at least the mainstream white audience that was targeted, and that was that every year for years, the cities had been erupted in violence and the ghettos had been burning themselves down, and white folks just could not understand what was going on. I had a lot of background reading that I was given, so I was supposed to be prepared when we got to the conference to actually do some of the work, but of course I didn't quite get around to that. So I figured I would read all that stuff when I was on the plane, but it was my first flight in my life, and I was so excited about being on the plane, and I got a window seat, and I spent the whole time just gawking at what I could see out the window, so I didn't get around to the reading, but I figured that was okay because most of high school was pretty much a no-brainer. So how much harder could racism and poverty and, ghettos and social justice be? I just figured I'd figure it out as I got there. We got to the conference and we were all staying in American University dorm. There were 40 of us, 40 states had sent representatives, and we looked around the room and 39 of us were white. The only person of color was a female from Hawaii. There was one other female from Montana, and that was us. And so one of the interesting moments about that was that there was no discussion about that fact. That fact was just a given. We didn't need to reflect on it. It was just the way things were And we went on. The organization of the conference was driven by what I later learned in my research was a legendary African-American YMCA executive. And he knew what he was doing. So we had a busy week. It was to my 17-year-old self a very boring set of learning about data, learning about legislation, learning about governance, learning about policy, all very tedious. But on that first night, there was something that really excited me and most of the other people, most of the other 40 of us. There was a delegation of grassroots organizers who were working in the local downtown YMCA, and they were doing grassroots organizing there, and they were helping the people in that community to organize themselves and solve their problems. So they were talking about community gardens, and they were talking about childcare, and they were doing lots of really exciting and creative things. In fact, the 40 of us were so excited that we asked the conference organizers to make it possible for us to go to the Y, which we had all immediately dubbed as the ghetto Y. We wanted to go to the Y to see for ourselves the people who were being so deeply affected. I should say that the organizers were all young African-American and Puerto Rican organizers, and they were only a couple of years older than us. So it was partly, I think, some sense of a generational fellow feeling, but we wanted to go, and sure enough, to their credit, the organizers made the arrangements. And so late in the week, we were going to have a field trip that evening. As the sun was going down, we got onto a bus and we went to the Y. It was sobering as we drove through the city, because this was the first time we'd gotten outside of the government complex, and we began to see residential areas. And as we drove through those blocks, there were block after block where ghetto riots had already happened, and places were reduced to rubble. There was still smoldering rubble as we drove through the blocks. This was a little scary, but we felt somewhat relief when we turned onto the block where the Y sat, and it was a very different scene. So that we saw a lively street life. There were kids playing in the street. There were people on the stoops visiting. We pulled up in front of the Y, and as the 40 of us got off the bus, we noticed eerily that everything on the street got suddenly very quiet. We walked into the YMCA. We were quickly greeted, and we forgot anything that was eerie about all that silence. We walked in, the doors were shut. We started the program, and we started hearing back from the organizers about what they were doing. But then almost immediately, there was this insistent knock at the door. There was this really urgent knock. And one by one, every grown-up in the room was pulled out of our room to go outside to get involved in what was increasingly animated conversation just outside the door. And we just got more and more concerned about what was going on outside the door. After a few minutes, the conference organizer and the lead grassroots organizer came back in. And I realized in reflection, that was probably the first time that in my life I had been in the hands of African-American leadership, of Black leadership. And they said with an enforced sense of calm and a sense of urgency that the community had just knocked on the door, and they have just decided that we are not welcome and that we are to leave immediately. We were, of course, scared to death, because they said, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're not going to react. We're going to walk together to the bus, and we're going to get out of here. So don't say anything, don't react, keep your heads down, and let's get on the bus and go back to the dorm. Well, we were scared to death. And as soon as the door opened, we walked through what was like a tunnel of palpably, furiously angry citizens. But they didn't say anything. There was this thunderous silence as we walked to the bus. Nothing happened except for our own sense of disease and terror. We got onto the bus and we drove back to the dorm. And to my surprise, none of the other 40 people who were participating in this conference wanted to talk about what had just happened. So all I could do was I went back to the dorm by myself while they went up. They had been invited by some co-eds who were in the summer school program at American University. They had invited to go up to a patio place where you could stand up on the roof on this patio, and they wanted to just hang out, flirt with each other, and make jokes and then gawk. They told me later they were gawking at the fact that they could see parts of the nation's capital still burning. So I was down by myself, just completely disoriented about what had just happened. And so I just wrote and wrote. And I have been writing ever since, because what I realized was, in that moment, whatever bubble of white privilege and protected state that I had been in was porous, and I was now in a completely unfamiliar, alien world.
I'd love to tell my story as well as John, as a storyteller, can tell his, but I'm going to read mine. I was born in a segregated South, Norfolk, Virginia, and I lived the first 10 years of my life in Norfolk in a working class neighborhood. At a young age, I was fascinated by the stories of the Holocaust and the suffering of Jewish and other people at the hands of the Nazis. Even though I was born 10 years after the end of World War II, I had two uncles who left high school to go fight in the war, and some of their stories and my parents' stories of those times touched me deeply. I had the good fortune also to grow up in the Unitarian Church in Norfolk, often attending services in Sunday school in churches that we rented in Black neighborhoods since we didn't have our own building. Going to college in Richmond, I grew interested in criminal sociology and justice, and I volunteered in the Richmond jail, and the Virginia State Penitentiary opened in 1800, and thankfully, too late, but torn down in 1991. After I graduated, my first job was at the Joint Security Complex here in Charlottesville. I worked for Offender Aid and Restoration, bringing volunteers from the community into the jail to meet and get to know inmates who were serving misdemeanor offenses. During my community corrections work, I also led a court diversionary program in Richmond so inmates could do community service instead of being locked up. A stint with the Virginia Department of Corrections ended my 7 years in corrections work. Important, crucial life lessons from these times were getting to know the inmates, their families, something of the communities where they lived and where they didn't live, and the reality of living discrimination and bigotry. As a VISTA volunteer, VISTA was the Volunteers in Service to America. It was known as the Domestic Peace Corps, and it was absorbed into AmeriCorps much later. But I was a VISTA volunteer, and I got a chance to work and spend a week in DC reworking the handbook that all VISTA volunteers used. And there were 30 or so of us in DC for a week. Everyone had so many stories of their experiences in Indian reservations, schools, health delivery services, among others, that I got an education not only on how many people care and the good work they were doing, but also the breadth and depth of our country's inequities. That education really grew with subsequent career choices. The opportunity to work with so many diverse employees, both in corrections and especially at UVA, changed my relationship to an understanding of social justice. At UVA, I was able to work with a diverse group of trainers providing DEI programs, diversity, equity, inclusion. And one ongoing offering in particular was working with housekeepers and facilities maintenance employees who wanted professional advancement. Many of these employees were from here, Charlottesville or surrounding counties, and from other countries, having escaped their home countries and being placed by the International Rescue Committee. Their stories and experiences shared with each other and us were amazing. I remember one man whose family had owned a community store in Kabul, and another who was the equivalent of a physician's assistant, also in Afghanistan, who were now working as groundskeepers and were very open about sharing their stories and their gratitude for being able to escape danger there. I share my experiences because of my close work at different times in my life with marginalized communities and how much those experiences influenced who I am. And because I'm so aware that anyone, whatever your career or life choices have been, whether you've experienced involvement with disenfranchised people or not, in today's world, we are being forced to notice, and if we're lucky enough, to have the time and resources to be involved in resisting the authoritarianism that is happening. We all have stories, and we want to, and they help make us who we are, and we want to know what those stories are. And we want to connect with each other through those stories. And that foundation of community is what sustains the work and will sustain us.
My testimony is not actually really about me, although I am called to act for many reasons, to continue the hard work of unraveling the vast legacy of white supremacy, protecting those too vulnerable to protect themselves, ensure that the promise of our Constitution, a Constitution that when I was 17, I took an oath to protect, to show that so many brave people fighting for justice that they're not alone, and perhaps mostly to honor my parents and to live by their example. My father dropped out of college in April 1942, a few weeks before graduation, to join the army, fight the Nazis. My mother and all of her family suffered under Nazi occupation of Luxembourg until liberation. I have a story about that I only began to tell this summer. It's a longer story, but suffice it to say that my mother was kicked out of high school for insulting Hitler. Her opportunity to enroll in another school ended when she refused to join Hitler Youth. Since she wasn't in school any longer, she got notification from the Nazis that she had to work in a factory somewhere in the East. A Luxembourg doctor who lived in Germany, and perhaps because he wrote from a German address was believed by the Nazis, wrote her an invented medical condition that kept her from being forced to undertake that labor. When she turned 18 and was then ordered again to be part of that forced labor, he repeated that lie and that illegal act. An act, by the way, that certainly put him at great personal risk. Now, his actions alone did not end the war. My parents' actions alone did not do so either. Each of our individual actions alone will not stop this administration's attempted fascist authoritarian takeover. But their actions make a difference. Collectively, my actions and yours will do so too.
Well, thank you, John and Diane and Frank. We are so very, very blessed by your commitment and your willingness to do this work in your own lives, but also in the life of this congregation. Just very briefly, these folks went to a training, a Mosaic training put on by the Unitarian Universalist Association about a year ago. And the training was really focused on how Unitarian Universalism can be anti-racist, anti-oppression, multicultural congregations, especially focused on how we are inside our congregations. And so these folks went to that training and came back with so much wonderful energy and were ready to just really help us think through how we could do this work. And then the election happened. And it became clear very quickly that things were going to not only get bad, but probably much worse than most of us had anticipated and feared. So these folks pivoted to doing resistance work, to doing anti-fascism work, if you will, and doing it in the context of our congregation. It started out with just sort of alerting people to when there were going to be protests here in Charlottesville, and they're still doing that work. starting an email list. And if you're not on the Mosaic list, I really encourage you to get on it. You can sign up for that list after the service at the Take Action table, which Aksha Carrier will be staffing. Aksha, where are you? There's Aksha over there. So stop by Aksha's table for sure, and make sure you get on their mailing list, because they have all kinds of good information. But they've been doing such incredible work, and they've been doing educational work and after church programs and connecting with groups like Indivisible, and their work has really just taken on a wonderful life of its own. And it's been so impactful and so important that at its last board meeting, our board of trustees recognized the Mosaic Group and gave them a charge in our congregation. I want to show you that charge if I can. So that's it. Here's what it says. In the face of rising authoritarianism that threatens democratic institutions and that targets marginalized identities and communities, the UUCville's Board of Trustees charges the Mosaic Squad with helping our congregation to become a community of resistance and liberation. Through education, information sharing, activism, and other anti-authoritarian levers, the Mosaic Squad will work with staff, lay members and friends, and resistance organizations and movements to empower the congregation to show up, to speak out, and to resist authoritarianism nationally, here in Virginia, and in our local community. The Mosaic Squad will draw on anti-racism and anti-oppression inspiration and resources from the UUA's Mosaic Project, as well as other liberatory sources. Pretty small job, huh? Wouldn't you say? But these folks are excited, passionate. You heard that excitement and passion and dedication in their personal stories. And we are just so blessed by your incredible commitment and leadership. But of course, it's not the rest of our job to sit back and watch them. Yay, good job. Keep at it. Nice. It's our job to wear those paper clips, to show up at protests, to join the Mosaic Squad if it's something you're interested in, and to just be part of this effort so that the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville can be a congregation of resistance and liberation. That's what we're called to do. We've been talking a lot about it, and I feel like that with the Mosaic Squad's leadership and with all of yours passion and commitment, that we can make a difference, that we can be part of the resistance movement. So we are so grateful. Let's put that slide up about the next really big important thing that's coming up, which is the No Kings National Day of Mobilization on October the 18th. This is the follow-on to the No Kings protest, which we had about 50 or 60 people from our congregation who attended that, maybe more. It was hard to keep count. And the Mosaic Squad is organizing, sort of our process for getting people there. If you want to carpool, you can see there's opportunities for that, to meet here and then go over there. So again, contact the Mosaic Squad if you're interested. And here is their contact information. Next slide, please. There it is. Well, that's their action groups. And there's their contact information, mosaic@uucharlottesville.org. Send them an email, find out, get on their mailing list. They are a fantastic, fantastic group, and we are so grateful for everything you are doing. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and let's now have our closing song, and I'm going to invite the string band to come on back up. We've got 2 more songs from them. They're going to sing one, then we'll have a benediction, and then they'll sing the postlude for us. So come on up, guys, and this one is We Shall Not Be Moved. I'll let John, if you want to introduce that, but I'm not a singer, so I'm going to step down.
So we hope that you'll join us in singing. This was a song that was an anthem in the civil rights movement and is now being revived. And you can remain seated if you'd like. We'll just sing from your seats, and hopefully you'll enjoy singing this with us.
Diane is going to deliver our closing words. I'll extinguish the chalice, but I had a revelation, pardon the pun there, that I forgot to put one important event in the announcements that's happening after church, which is that the UUCville Christian Fellowship will be having a gathering in the parlor at 12:15 or 12:30 to 1:15. It's a fabulous group. Many of its members are up on this stage. So all the other wonderful activities and the Christian Fellowship at 12:30. Okay.
Thanks. This is a poem, We Live by Hope, by Pastor Steve Garness Holmes, a retired Methodist pastor. Hope is not an anticipation of a certain outcome, but trust in goodness. The root and center of all things is an abiding goodness, powerful and eternal. Despite all danger and evil, all fear and hurt, that goodness, that grace endures. We trust it, and that is our hope. Hope has survived war and tyranny. It has also, at times, prevented them. Trust that love, more powerful than fear, that grace which never forsakes us. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. This trust is not wishing, it's knowing. This is hope.
So normally we start with a postlude and you guys start to head on out, but we're going to sing, it's a Woody Guthrie, yes?
Yeah.
You fascists bound to lose. So we want people to stand for this one, I think, right?
okay.
Yeah, we want to sing it out, sing out, sing out. Stan, this has got a lot of pep.